Today I'm going to be talking about carceral injustice, which is basically the lack of justice in the prison system here in the United States. So, using Ernest Gaines' book, A Lesson Before Dying, which we read in class, that takes place in the community of Bayonne, Louisiana, in the 1940s. It tells us the story of Jefferson, who is a 21-year-old uneducated black field worker who was wrongfully convicted of the robbery and murder of a white convenience store owner in town. Jefferson was first imprisoned by his third person consciousness, which justified his actual imprisonment. So there's third person consciousness is to understand oneself as becoming nothing but basically a soulless body. You are amputated from who you are as a person. You're just a body, basically. This occurs to Jefferson because he was reduced to a story and a statistic inside of the historical racial schema. So by breaking down his consciousness of himself, the system of white supremacists picked him up, chewed, and swallowed. Just like in the case of so many other African American males today. So speaking of today, when I'm not doing online coursework brought upon me by the unfortunate epidemic of COVID-19, I'll be on the couch watching crime shows. So by that, I mean like NCIS, Law and Order, Criminal Minds. And last week, there was a rerun of NCIS New Orleans titled Biased. So this is an episode that deals with the murder of an unarmed African American petty officer named Ali Mitchell by a white police officer in the show named Ted Bradley. So this episode obviously includes police brutality, but if we focus on the investigation side of it, it takes place in the same setting as A Lesson Before Dying, just 76 years later. We still see these same repeating processes of injustice in the carceral state because the cop wasn't charged with anything, wasn't charged with murder, didn't get in trouble. He eventually did resign from being a police officer, but just like that, in so many other cases, the cop who should be at fault is not, and it just degrades and dehumanizes African American males. So one of the major conversations that happened in this show between Pride, our main detective, and Officer Carter, who is black, so two cops or people working for the system. Pride says about halfway through, instead you're jumping to conclusions, ignoring procedure because you assume that the system is rigged against Mitchell. So the system is rigged, obviously, but he didn't follow procedure because he took evidence from Ali Mitchell's house, and it could be seen as trying to, mess up the investigation and could be held against him for it. And Carter replies, it's not an assumption, okay? It's experience living in this world as a black man. So the stadies are going to say Mitchell's a crook, and you can bet that the picture they provide the media won't be a graduation photo. That's the photo that he took of him and of Mitchell and another young friend who the cop was actually investigating. But yeah. And Pride later responds, new rule. I don't assume to know your experience, and you don't assume to know mine. Is that fair? Now, that sentence right there sounds, if we just followed that, then our world would be so much better, like a better place for people. There would be less pain, there would be less people getting hurt if we just stopped assuming what other people will go through and on a daily basis. So these stories and experiences of real people in real cases just get shoved into a product of another statistic. This resonates with me because I'm studying to be a data scientist. So with that, it is basically I study big sets of data, finding patterns or solutions to a problem, or solutions to just the next question of what does this mean for any data that I have. And so then you have the news and media reporting the story, covering it, you move on to the next big story or whatever. And then within a week, reports the next young unarmed black boy getting shot roll across the television screen at the bottom of your nightly news or daily news or morning, whichever. Yeah. And so, because of the epistemology of ignorance and the racial contract, white people benefit from and justify the enactment of violence. And so, stepping back, epistemology of ignorance means that the knowledge that is constructed and maintained through ignorance or non knowledge just basically keeps the system of violence going and system of, just everything bad. And so the closing lines of the episode were one thing for sure, everybody has a bias, even if you're unaware of it. So this is the state of our society, and something that will stick with me from this point forward is that everybody has a bias. So